Hey everyone, how are you guys doing? Hopefully your day is going very well so far and hopefully it ends on a high note, right? Welcome to Learn to Write Sci-Fi. Now this whole series is here to help you become a self-published sci-fi author. Excuse the car in the background if you can hear it. Apartments are sometimes very noisy. Anyway, so today's topic we are going to talk about as you're going through, getting closer hopefully to the actual publishing part of your story. For those of you who are further ahead, and if you're still writing, whatever, I mean, it take as long as you need. We've talked about that in other videos. You know, the process sometimes just takes longer for it to be better for certain people. That's fine. But one thing that I want to address is maybe a concern that some of you might be having, and that is, you know, maybe you go through all this trouble of writing this story, getting this short story all the way put together. You're getting test readers. You're doing the covers, which we're going to be talking about in the next videos. You're just pulling all these pieces together, and this little voice in the back of your head says, well, what if you do all this work and nobody buys it? And if you're like me, I'm somebody who, most of the time, I want to do the best job that I can. A lot of the time I feel like I don't actually live up to that, and I set my expectations of myself really, really high. And I've had to learn as I've gotten older and I have a little bit more experience where sometimes my level of expectations of others and of myself are just too extreme for the level that I'm at. And it's not fair to myself to expect massive greatness when I'm still trying to work my way up to those things. And, you know, let's assume for a moment, you know, you spend weeks or months putting this story together, and you write it and you publish it and you get like 2 sales. You're like, man, this sucks. I went through all this work of marketing, networking, doing, you know, writing, editing, everything, and nothing really happened. What you need in those instances is to know why you want to do it. There's this awesome book called, Start With Why. And it is awesome because the author, helps you to try to figure out what is it that you're trying to do. Now, it comes at it from the perspective of business and business owners, but like I said in other videos, if you're going to be able to, if you want to start taking writing and make money from it, you are beginning the stages of being a business owner. Your products are your writing. You're an author, but you have to wear the hat of a business owner because you have to think of marketing and social media and, video productions if you're going to have any like that. I mean, there's a lot of other things that are going other than just writing. So it sometimes makes it a lot harder because then we're doing extra work is what we feel like, and then we're still failing. But if you know why you're doing this, if you know what your reason is, not like, I just want to make money. No, you need a really strong why. That why is going to push you when you don't want to write, when you don't want to market, when you don't want to make videos, when you don't want to do all those things that are necessary to be successful. That is the thing that's going to keep pushing you and saying, you got to get up, you got to keep going. Because otherwise, you'll listen to like the voices of procrastination, of laziness, of boredom, of, there's better things to do, it's not worth it. All these little voices that try to speak to us, that try to bring us down. And before you know it, it's going to be a year since the last time you wrote. And then it's going to be 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, 12 years, 20 years. You're going to look back and there's going to be huge segments of your life that you could have been working towards something awesome. But instead, you got discouraged. I've had this happen to myself multiple times. I believe, and this isn't being bragging, I believe I could be right now at a much higher level of success if I would have just picked something earlier on in my life and just stuck with it and just became the master of it and just became the expert. But instead, what I chose to do was I chose to dabble. A problem that I have is that I'll test the waters in something. I'll get really excited about a new project or a new hobby or a new interest or a new way to do, I want to do a business in this or whatever. And I get really excited. I gobble up a bunch of information. I get myself all stoked and psyched up. And then I start doing it. And then I'm like, this takes more work than I kind of thought it would. and then I kind of back off, and then I find something else. And that has been the poor cycle that I found myself in for years, until the last year or so, probably the last 2.5 years. I started realizing that, successful people are successful because they don't quit. That's one of the biggest things. They decide what they want to do, they figure it out, and they just hone in on it, and they stick with it. Some people are very successful in a very short amount of time. Some people are very successful after a long amount of time. Our perspective as the consumer is usually warped because we only see once they're great. Sometimes you see people as they're beginning to climb up and they're starting to reach that level of fame or notoriety or growth in their business. And then you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was really cool. I remember that 2 years ago. But you don't know the years that it took to get to that point that you saw them 2 years before they were great. So if you really want to write, you really want this to work, you really want to make a business at this, you have to figure out your why, your reason for doing it. Because when you have projects that fall flat on their face, you need to be like, man, I can't stop here. Yeah, it sucks. I spent all that time to do this and it didn't work. I did market research, or I did polling of my audience, or I really tried to figure out what might actually sell, or I spent a lot of time really being passionate about this project and really trying to make it work, and it just fell flat. And then you'll have other projects that you're not maybe as confident in, and they do really great, and it's very confusing. But you have to know why you want to do this. You have to. I've had to do this on myself and working on myself, and trying to really figure out this year, what is it I want to do? What is it I want to be known for? What is it that I actually want to impact in the world? And I'm not talking about that loosey-goosey emotional stuff. I'm talking about like really making a difference. If you really want to do something, you really have to work at it. And it's going to be several times harder than what you probably think. It's going to take longer than probably what you think. But think about the difference. If you would have started doing what you're trying to do now 5 years ago, where you'd be if you stuck with it. If you kept growing, if you kept learning, if you kept experimenting, if you kept amassing an audience, even if it was like a trickle effect. If you could have started 5 years ago and you could have added 500 people to an email list, you'd have 2,500 emails to market to just 5 years from, if you started then. 2,500 people, 2,500 sets of eyes that you could potentially market to every product you write, to poll, to, ask, what product would you like to see? What stories would you like told? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you could do. It's not to dwell on what you could have done. It's to think, yeah, I could have done that then. If I don't start now, then 5 years from now, I'm going to be feeling the same way or worse, because I'm going to be saying, man, if I would have done this 10 years ago. Don't do that. If you really want this to work, you got to figure out why you want to do it, and it's a deep, deep reason, and it's deeper than just making money. If it's something about making money, then it's got to be more deeper than that. It's got to be something like, I want financial freedom. I want to be able to write about the projects that I want to write. I want to actually make a difference in the world. I actually want to help inspire people with my writing. I want to entertain people with my writing, on a national or an international scale. There needs to be something deeper than I just want to make money, or I just want to quit my job, because that kind of stuff, you can go find another job. You can. Maybe you've tried, but there's other jobs out there. There are. There's lots of ways to make money, varying degrees as to, how much, but there's jobs everywhere. Not all of them pay great. But if you're looking at, I want to write because it's just something I really want to do, and that way I can quit this crappy job, it's going to take a while to get going, and, it's a lot of work. But I just wanted to touch on that a bit today and kind of help fight that voice that might be trying to speak to you, or that's not yet, but will in a few weeks. Because, see, the way that things work that I've found is that as we start trying to move into our purpose, especially if you're praying about it, obstacles are going to come up. Reasons are going to get in your way. There's going to be hindrances. There's going to be forces of things that run into you that you're like, okay, look, if everything works for the next month, I'll be able to write this story and everything will be great. And then stuff will happen. You know, your car will break, or your computer dies, or you lose your files, or a bunch of other stuff that could happen that'll keep getting in the way. And you're like, man, is this worth it? Is it? I mean, I fought through all these things and I finally got it to the market, and then nobody bought it, or I only sold a couple copies, or even I sold 20 copies, but 20 isn't going to make you rich or anything. But you have to know the reason why you're going to keep pushing past those things, because those things are going to keep happening. They are. They're not going to stop. Life is like that. But at the same time, I have found that I have been presented with opportunities that I believe are completely linked with the reason that I had those opportunities is because I stepped out in faith, or that I kept believing that I was trying to seek out the right path and not just blindly follow, just like, the American dream says, or just whatever society says. So there's a lot of different other little topics that are in here. I can get into that in a longer video if anybody wants, but I just wanted to kind of just touch on that, help motivate you a little bit, help inspire you a little bit to keep at it, don't stop. There's been a lot of times that I regret now creative opportunities that I had that I didn't pursue because I was either too lazy, or I didn't think it was worth it, or I didn't want to put the money on the line, or I didn't really think it was worth my time. And if I would have done those things, I would have been in a different place right now. And I know that. But I'm trying to learn from that, and I want you to learn from my mistakes. That's a part of what wisdom is being able to learn from somebody else so you don't have to do the stupid mistakes too. That's always my mentality. I would much rather read a book or be mentored through a podcast or through YouTube videos, learn from somebody who is successful or is at least a little further down the street than I am, and then avoid some of those same mistakes. So anyway, guys, if you'd like to follow us on Facebook, it is Learn to Write SciFi, and on YouTube, we are White Light Media. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you all again tomorrow.